about like this. And so it's going to be around Thayer and Hardy and Myrtle here in the next half hour or so. Ravenden eventually is where it's going to head up, and maybe eventually over towards Pocahontas if this thing holds together long enough. Now, as the storms have been getting into these far southeastern counties, they have been encountering a little more stable air. So hopefully this thing will weaken with time, but this is a very formidable thunderstorm. And again, it's going to be moving right along and north of Highway 62. So again, folks in the path of this storm need to be taking shelter. So again, the tornado warning is out until 7:15 tonight. I want to zoom in maybe a little bit further so we can get an idea of exactly where this is. And you can see that it's going to be in the vicinity of Highway 62. It's going to be right near Viola and Vedette. So that is the area of great concern this afternoon. So I want to change this over and kind of take a look at a few of these different parameters and kind of see what's going on here as far as this storm is concerned. So the first thing we're looking at is the reflectivity and the stronger thunderstorm there. But if I switch this over to take a look and see if whether or not there's any debris being produced by this. The good news is I don't see any debris, so that would show up as some different colors on here, and you'd see that right in this area. But right now, we're not picking up any sort of a debris ball, so that certainly is very good news. Let's take out the look at the wind field on this thing and see whether or not we have some rotation on this. And let's get a look at this. And we do have at least a little bit of rotation. And again, it's going to be in this area that's going to be just to the east of Idette, right in here, and probably right along Highway 62. So if you're just west of Viola, I need for you to be in your tornado shelter right now. And of course, I would hold all traffic in this area. So if you're the Fulton County Sheriff's deputies, you may want to keep people from going west. In fact, anybody who lives right along the highway needs to be making sure they take shelter in their storm shelter. Make sure you're properly dressed, get some shoes on, make sure everybody has maybe some headgear. Also get your storm safety kit out of the closet and put that pre-positioned where you normally take shelter. So again, that is what we're looking at there. So let's go back and see if we can see any sort of a debris ball with this thing, just in case. And right now, not seeing too much, although we do notice a change in the color right in there, and that corresponds to that spinning. So there may be a little something on the ground right there. So I would certainly take this warning seriously and move to shelter. And again, this is all within Fulton County. So the storm actually was initiated back here in Baxter County. If you live in Baxter County, you are safe to get out of your storm shelter. If you are in Viola, I need for you to be in your storm shelter, and over here towards Salem, I also need for you to be in your storm shelter. And everybody here along Highway 62, make sure that you guys are taking the proper precautions as that storm is moving in your direction. So as we kind of take a look at maybe some of these stronger winds again too, just so you can kind of see what the wind field is doing here. And I need to remove this for a second and show you some of these winds. And right now, not a lot of strong wind right there. There is what we call a little gate-to-gate shear. Okay, that wind right there on the back side of this thing is saying 72 mile per hour, and that's going away from the Springfield radar. So that is going in, and the other one was coming towards us. So that does indicate a spin, but there is very strong winds being detected in that thunderstorm, and they may be over 70 miles per hour, and that's up at the storm height. So some of that could be getting translated down to the surface. So you're likely to be getting at least some wind damage, if not tornadic damage, in that part of our viewing area. And again, that is western parts of Fulton County this afternoon. Again, some very strong winds in that part of our viewing area. Now, the next thing I want to do is kind of take that off for a second, so that we can kind of clear this up just a little bit. Again, you see those stronger winds. The other thing we've been looking at here is some very large hail that has been falling in parts of our viewing area this afternoon. So I'm going to take the radar off here real briefly and see whether or not we're getting some very large hail with that storm. And it looks like the hail has been here on the back end of this thing, but that is some really large hail that's associated with that storm as it's been moving along the Missouri-Arkansas line. So if we do a little query on what that is, that says that that hail is going to be almost 1 inch in diameter. So you're talking about something that's getting up around little less than golf ball size hail, but that's still some fairly large hail that is going to be associated with that storm. And it's not unusual for that hail to actually be to the north of the tornado track. So if we kind of take this off for a second and I put the reflectivity back on, I'll be able to show you some of that. So what happens is your tornado is going to be down here in this far end of the storm, and in this area up in here where you see these brighter pink and purple colors in here, that's going to be your large hail core. And so that large hail core is going to move just to the north of Viola, and the tornado threat is going to continue to move right along Highway 62. So again, anybody along and to the north of Highway 62 here in northern Fulton County needs to be prepared that you're in store for some fairly rough weather. And you'll notice that the rough weather may actually extend to the Missouri side up here into Oregon County as well. So around Lebo, you also may be getting some hail, and that's going to be to the west of Highway 17 and right along Highway 142. So folks up there also may be getting some rough weather this afternoon. So again, the tornado threat for Fulton County is in effect until 7:15 tonight. I want to see if we can get a hold of some of these safety rules for you this afternoon. Remember, if you have a storm shelter, make sure you go there, whether it's your basement or an actual outdoor storm shelter. Make sure everybody's dressed. If you have some headgear to put on, you always want to remember to protect your head. So if you don't have, a football helmet, a bicycle helmet, something like that, make sure you grab some pillows and blankets and get as low as possible as you can. Now, if you go to the basement, you'll want to go to the northeast corner of the basement, and remember to stay away from anything that could catch fire. So stay away from the fuse box, the hot water heater, the furnace, anywhere where you may have gas or propane coming in. So if you can't go to the northeast corner, go to the center. Try to take shelter underneath the stairs or a sturdy piece of furniture like a rather heavy-duty table. Now, if you don't have a storm shelter or a basement, you want to get to the lowest floor possible. Put as many walls between you and the outside as you possibly can. So an interior hallway is always the best. If you have an interior bathroom that doesn't have any windows to it, or you have a walk-in closet that's fairly large, you can take shelter there. And the idea is that you put these walls really close together. First of all, it's more structurally sound engineering-wise. It doesn't have that wobble to it. But if one wall falls, it creates a teepee effect, and oftentimes you're nestled in underneath of that, giving you some added protection. Now, if you have a multi-story house, you want to get everybody down to the lowest level there. If you live in a modular home, same rules apply, especially if it's one of the newly constructed modular homes. This is a single-story house. Get to the interior sections. Try to stay away from windows. Remember to get some pillows and blankets and cover your head. If you live in one of the really old mobile homes, oftentimes they have the tie-downs. A lot of times they're good for a smaller tornado or smaller hurricane strength winds of 70 miles per hour, but you're better off evacuating those and going to a more substantial structure if you can. Also, because this thing is along the highway, if somebody has ventured out, you can call them. Probably best to stay in the vehicle. Make sure you have the seatbelt buckled on. Try to get as low as you possibly can. If you have to abandon the vehicle, get into a sturdy structure or get into some sort of ditch. The problem is, you can see with very heavy rain, we have to worry about flooding of those ditches, and I don't want to put somebody in danger in that area, in that respect as well. If you stay in the car, at least you have the airbags, and some of that metal will help protect you. You just want to get down in case something should come through the windows and shatters the glass. So that is something to do. And again, this is a very dangerous looking thunderstorm. We do have some spin with that. We haven't seen any real tornadic debris ball type activity with this thing, but we'll continue to check that. We'll do that right now. And again, there may be something in here. Again, we see these reflectivity colors right in here. Notice how it's inching a little closer to the area around Viola. So again, if you live in the town of Viola, I want you to be in your storm shelter right now. You really don't have much time before that storm moving at 60 miles an hour is actually going to be into town. Also, there's a fair amount of clutter up here in southern Oregon County too. We'll need to keep an eye on some of that as well this evening. Let's go ahead and get back to the velocities, especially since we were seeing those winds over 70 miles per hour this afternoon. Again, that's up in the at the radar height of the storm, but we still continue to have some pretty strong winds in that part of our viewing area. So let's just query some of this, see what we have. Again, there's a 76. There's going to be some other winds in here. Those are 47. Back to the north and west, you can see there's 68 mile per hour winds in there. And then the green is actually coming towards the radar, which is why there's a negative in front of that. It's kind of a mathematical thing. So this is going back towards the radar. The other is positive, going away. And what that does is you sort of add those two numbers together. So in this case, it was 10 going back to the radar, 68 going away. So what we do is we say that's 78 knots of gate-to-gate shear is what we do. So that's a combination of those two numbers. And that's actually a fair amount of spin with this storm. So that storm is really spinning. And anytime you get those spinning thunderstorms, they are capable of producing tornadoes, which is why they have issued that tornado warning this afternoon. And even if we don't have that, we've already shown that this thing has got some really high winds. Again, that is up where the radar is intersecting the storm. And I say that because remember, if the radar beam would go out, you know, you don't want it to go straight out. You want it to be tilted up just a little bit. And so as it goes out, it goes up in the atmosphere. And of course, you have the curvature of the Earth. And so out here at this height, that beam is probably up about 15 or 16,000 feet. So we know the storm is spinning very rapidly in the mid-levels. It's not always an indication of what's happening at the surface, which is why we need storm spotters and why I'm sure that northern Arkansas or Little Rock, which is in charge of issuing warnings for Fulton County, is probably talking to some of those spotters up there in Fulton County. So again, a very formidable thunderstorm there. And again, we're watching that very carefully. Again, this thing continues to move on to the east pretty rapidly this afternoon. So I want to remind everybody that the tornado warning is in effect until 7:15 tonight. Let me clear some of this off and go ahead and see if we can get that reflectivity back on there so we can actually watch the progression of that thunderstorm. So you see it there, and it's interesting that it hasn't really updated all that much. I want to check Storm Tracker 3 for just a second. We're getting a pretty good picture of that storm here as well. And again, that is a really strong, very dangerous looking thunderstorm. And let me get a little better view here. Okay, the storm now has passed through Viola, actually, and this thing is knocking on the door to Salem. So this thing is all the way over in Salem right now, so I'm not quite sure why the graphics haven't updated there, but this thunderstorm now is no longer in Viola. This thing is way over here in Salem. So this part of the storm right here is way over here, just to the west of Salem right now. So we'll have to see what we can do to get this thing updated just a little bit. See if I can maybe take off the Springfield radar and put on the. That's a little bit better. This is the Little Rock radar. And so I'm looking at it from Little Rock on the south side of this thing. This is a little closer to what we're seeing on Storm Tracker 3. It's still not quite as accurate as what we have. Again, there's no longer any threat to the Viola area. It has all moved over here towards Salem now. But this is just west of town. It's only about a mile or two west of Salem on Highway 62 right now. So again, I want all the folks down here in Salem to be in your tornado shelter. Again, this thing is cruising along at about 60 miles per hour this afternoon. Let me recenter this so you can see this just a little bit better, and get that. There you go, right there. All right, so from here it looks like the thunderstorm is going to continue right through Salem. Also, if you live north, going north out of Salem in either direction here on Highway 9 or up towards Highway 17, it looks like there could be some really large hail just to the north of the Salem area as well. And this thing is going to continue moving to the east, so it's actually going to come off of 412 there and actually go east and move over towards a Saddle and maybe eventually junction into 289 here that goes north and south in the eastern part of Fulton County, and that's going to be just to the north of Cherokee Village, which is located down in here just to the north of Ash Flat. So folks in this part of Fulton County, the southeast of east-southeast of Salem, be advised that that storm is building in your direction. And this thing has been moving a little bit. You know, if you look at it this way, it's moving a little bit to the right. So we call those things a right mover. And I think it's going to continue dropping onto the southeast. So let me do another storm track for you just so that you can kind of get your bearings with where I think this thing is going to go. And again, it's moving in this direction and here like this. And it's still cranking along at a really high rate of speed. So places like Saddle, it's going to be there at 726, French at 722, Salem at 712, So again, this thing is just moving right along, and it did update a little bit on the radar, but again, this thing is moving so fast that I think our radar Storm Tracker 3 is probably picking this up just a little bit better than what the National Weather Service radar is. This thing gets delivered to us via satellite, and so it has to go through a bunch of communication channels. So I'm going to step over here off screen. I'm going to let you continue to monitor that for a second while I actually take a look at Storm Tracker 3, since that is a bit more accurate. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go in over here, and the storm is actually back built and split a little bit. And let me just kind of zoom into town here a little bit, and it looks like this thing is going to be over Welch Street, Elm Street. Let me get in just a bit closer. Pine Street, Oak Street, some really intense hail maybe around Old Cherokee Road. So anybody on those roads in the western part of Salem, this thing is coming into your area, and I need for you guys to be in your tornado shelter pretty quickly here. This thing has got some really high reflectivity to it. All right, so this thing is probably producing some fairly large hail too as it's coming into that area. And again, that's right where it looks like the highway is splitting and coming into the main part of town. Again, that's what I'm seeing here on Storm Tracker 3, but that would be the area of the strongest updrafts would be right there on Highway 62 coming right on into Salem. So again, I want folks in Salem to be in your tornado shelter right now. We getting any reports up in there yet, Paul? Okay, they have reported radar is indicating 1-inch hail. I have Paul Adler in here helping me out tonight, so Paul's kind of keeping an eye on things a little bit. Again, if you have a report, we'd sure like to know about it. All right, it looks like the most intense core is now right over the west part of Salem. So folks in Salem, you're getting some really large hail and some really intense rain right now, and I imagine the winds are probably really very strong up there. You can kind of see that reflected in the National Weather Service radar as well this afternoon. So again, if you are in Salem, and actually if I need for folks southeast of Salem to get into their storm track too, because again, this thing is moving along at a very rapid clip this afternoon. What report do you have, Paul?
Radar update here.
Okay. All right. All right, so what happened is the National Weather Service, they took a lightning strike a few days ago in one of the other severe thunderstorms that we've had, and apparently they just sent out a message that their radar has stopped spinning, which is why when we were looking at that radar a few minutes ago out of Springfield, that storm wasn't moving. So again, they've had some issues, and so switching over to the Little Rock radar has been a benefit to us, and another reason why we have Storm Tracker 3 live Doppler radar, because that way we always have you covered here in Springfield. All right, so Williford, if you're down by Williford, I need for you guys to be in your tornado shelters. That thing is headed in your direction. All right, let me back out of this just a little bit. Looks like the rain is starting to lessen up on the west side of Salem right now. The heavier core is now about 3 or 4 miles, maybe even more than that, to the southeast of the downtown area. Again, this thing is really flying along this afternoon, and you can kind of see that. So this radar is not actually keeping up with things. So what you're seeing here on this depiction, this heavier core that you see right here is now right about here. So that heavier core is now just to the southeast of Salem, and it's moving to the southeast very quickly. And this light rain that you see up in here, that is now within the city limits of Salem. That's how fast this thing is moving this afternoon. And so in the time that it takes the information to go from Little Rock to what we call the family of services computer pool, then it gets taken out of there to the satellite down to our computer system here and us to show you on the air. That's how fast that storm system has moved. So the electronics can't keep up with it that fast. And that's, again, why we have Storm Tracker 3. Storm Tracker 3 actually samples a storm every 60 seconds. And so we get that information directly from Fordland. It actually takes 9 nanoseconds to get the information from Fordland back here to the television station. That's how fast the communication link is. And that's why I'm able to keep up with it on a different radar faster than we're actually able to keep up with it here this afternoon. I want to point out that, see all the lightning strikes that we're getting up in here on Highway 9? That's an indication of really strong updrafts in there. And again, I think there's probably a pretty good hail core that may be developing with this storm. And let me see if I can at least get that on here for you this afternoon. Take that off, put the hail core, see if we're getting some hail with that. And it's showing the older hail on here. Let me see if I can at least recenter that so you can see that and not have to strain. But again, that is the hail that passed through those areas earlier. And if we query that now, that hail is now over 1.25 inches. So you're talking about hail that's up to the size of golf balls with that thunderstorm. And again, that was the history on the storm. It's probably still producing that golf ball size hail this afternoon as it's rolling onto the south and east. And again, let me recenter this thing so you can kind of see where this thing is going. But again, the tornado warning remains in effect for Fulton County. And just to be sure, let me put that on here real briefly. And you can see the red outline here. See the polygon? So again, from Salem on to the southeast, and then they have adjusted it a little bit. Notice how they brought that back down here towards Ash Flat. So that's going to be in parts of those southern counties down there. Again, that's going to be parts of Izard County, Arkansas, and over in towards Sharp County, Arkansas. So they've actually let this thing move to the right, which is what I told you I thought it was doing. And the National Weather Service in Little Rock has adjusted things just a little bit. So again, if we take this from where the core is now, bring it off to the south and east, and again, Hart, Cherokee Village, Hardy are all in the path of this thunderstorm. So you can see that there. So I'll step to the other side of the screen so you can kind of see where this thing is going. And again, it's no longer in Salem. This core is way down here now. And it's going to be some larger hail, some intense rain with some hail to the north of it. But again, it quite likely could be producing a tornado this afternoon. There is a significant amount of spin to that storm. So let me take this off of here for a second. And let me go back and we'll examine some of those features off of the Little Rock radar and see what they're seeing. So the first thing we'll look for to see is if there's any debris being produced. And you'll notice that we're starting to get some of that. So there may actually have been some debris produced by that storm. We'll have to check in with Salem to see whether or not they've had any damage. If you have, please let us know. Shoot us a Facebook message or an email, and we'll go ahead and check that. But yes, I want everybody to be in your tornado shelter down there. There may actually have been some debris with a tornado there. Also, let's continue to check these wind velocities. And it doesn't look like, at least on this scan, like we have the really tight core anymore. Remember, on that other scan back farther, there was pretty bright reds next to some brighter greens, and that has become kind of muted. So we're not seeing that really good spin anymore. Let's see if I can pick up some of the winds with this thing. And we'll do a little bit of a query. I need to take the tornado warning off before I do that. We'll see what kind of winds we have with this thing. Again, a negative means that the wind is coming back towards Springfield. So it's actually a westerly wind at 15 miles per hour and something that's going eastward. And it looks a little calmer there. Still some 55 mile per hour winds ahead of the storm. So there may be coming outflow dominant. So what do I mean by outflow dominant? Well, let me take this off of here real quick, and then I'll explain that to you. And we'll put the reflectivity back on here for you. Okay, so what happens in these thunderstorms is that the air has to be very organized in order for a tornado to occur. So what happens is that ahead of the storm, we have a tube of air that tends to roll like this on the ground. So if you think about a barrel rolling on the ground, we call that horizontal vorticity, right? So it's a rolling barrel of air. And then this thunderstorm, remember, it was spinning like this, right? I kind of have to exaggerate like this. And so what happens is that's kind of like a vacuum, and it takes that rolling tube of air and it actually tilts it up into the storm. And so we can create that rolling tube of air. As the air goes up, it goes out of the thunderstorm and then comes down on the backside. When it hits the ground, some of it comes around and swings on the underside. And what happens is when that downflow becomes too strong and pushes out, it disrupts that rolling barrel of air. And so we call that outflow dominant. And so the winds are becoming more down and out as opposed to getting pulled up within the storm. Now, that's not unusual for those downdraft winds to become a little strong at times. And what happens is the storm starts to cycle a little bit. The wind field gets disrupted. The storm continues on its merry way, and there's still updraft in here. And then after a while, what happens is the outflow winds will now weaken, and then we can restart the process of picking up that barrel roll of air, and then the tornado will reform and resume. And so that's why it appears with one thunderstorm, that tornado will tend to skip along. It becomes outflow dominant. Maybe the tornado winds get disrupted, then all of a sudden it kind of reforms another tornado, and it would actually produce multiple tornadoes that way. So you'd have a little tornado back here, and another little tornado here, and another little tornado here. But one storm could produce multiple tornadoes that way. They won't happen all at the same time. They're very short-lived. They're not, big, huge track tornadoes or anything like that. But it is possible that may be going on. The other thing too is notice how this is starting to look a little like a bow, at least on this particular image here. And sometimes these things will intersect the jet stream, and the jet stream winds coming in the backside will come down through the thunderstorm and then out. And then as that happens, you get these huge blasts of wind, and this becomes more of a bow echo type event than an actual tornadic type of event. And that may be starting to transition here. So that thunderstorm got pretty big, and again, it's cruising through the east side of Fulton County. It's getting ready to get into Sharp County here pretty quick. But this thing may be producing some really, really high winds at the surface. So even if you don't have a tornado, you may be getting some really strong wind damage. And something that's actually an indication of that, see all the lightning in here? So there's some really good up and down draft going on, because that is separating the ions and the charge of those water droplets, and that's helping to create some of that discharge and that lightning that you see here. All right, so Paul's been handing me a few notes. Okay, they did report a tornado in Sharp County. So that would tend to go along with what we're seeing here with some of this stuff. They did report some 4-inch hail and some broken windshields, and that was a report that was actually sent in by the public. And Paul is monitoring some of the National Weather Service chat information that's coming out of there. So again, this is a very dangerous thunderstorm, and I want folks that are down in Fulton and Sharp counties to be in your tornado shelters now. I want to put the tornado warning back on, and I'm going to recenter this a little bit so that we can kind of get a better idea of where this thing is going. And then what I want to do is I want to query this so you can kind of see the information. So the tornado warning is in effect for Fulton County, in this case, until 8 p.m. tonight now. Once they reissued that, remember the initial warning was until 7:15, and now they've extended that until 8 p.m. tonight. So this thing, again, is producing hail 4 inches around. So that is really huge hail. That's, I think, a little bigger than baseball-size hail, and it's probably got some really strong winds with that. In fact, earlier I showed you we had winds that were over 70 miles per hour, at least up in the radar. But by looking at it, some of that is getting deflected to the ground. A good rule of thumb is at least 80% maybe getting deflected to the ground at the maximum. So you're still talking winds that are going to be somewhere in the upper 60 mile per hour range, and that's going to do a significant amount of damage as well as that storm comes across the area. So again, that's what we're looking at with this. The tornado warning has been extended until 8 p.m. tonight. Again, let me clear some of this off so we can get an idea of what's happening with this event. And I want to go back to the radar since we've had a report of a tornado. Let me clear this off real quick. back to sweeping radar, and let's put up the debris ball. And it's nothing that's really sharp in there. Again, it looked like it was probably somewhere here around Saddle, crossing 289 down towards Cherokee Village. There may be some lofted debris in there. I don't really think that it's a long track tornado, but there may be some lofted debris within that thunderstorm.
Ron, chat, they did say possible tornado 7 miles northwest of Cherokee Village.
Okay, and that would be in the area that's pretty close to Saddle. And that's what we're watching there along 289. So at least I have the right area pegged. And again, let's see what we got on these winds. They look pretty strong. There's still some really strong winds in here. Yeah, it still looks like the spin may be down just a little bit to me. One of the things you have to watch for with these changing wind colors is that because you're looking at the radar from Little Rock now, the wind that's going towards the radar is going to be in the red, and the wind in the green is going to be away. And so at some point that may change as it crosses over the axis. So that we're going to have to keep that in mind as we're watching this storm tonight. Again, Cherokee Village is down here, and again off to the north and west there may be a potential tornado. And again, it's a really strong and very dangerous thunderstorm. So I'm going to let you take a look at this reflectivity right now. I'll put that back on for you so you can look at that. And then I'm going to go take a look at Storm Tracker 3 because, again, it's going to be faster than what I'm seeing here on this radar. Before I go, I want to point out, I told you that what happens is these storms will cycle. And notice how we've kind of reformed a hook echo here just to the northwest of Cherokee Village. So that would coincide with what Paul was just saying from the National Weather Service in Little Rock, that there was that potential tornado. So the tornado is going to be between Cherokee Village and Saddle here in far southeastern Fulton County. It's going to be located right in here. And again, since this thing is now reforming a hook echo, and what happens in here is that air is going in like this, and the air is going in so strong that it creates kind of a dry slot in the thunderstorm. And then you can see all the rain, and that rear flank downdraft will come down and is sweeping around the outside of this thing. And so that's why this whole thing is curving. So you've got the inflow here, the curving air come around it, and that's why the tornado is going to be right in this area, somewhere down in here. And then this would be kind of a rear flanking line, and that may actually be an indication of that rear flank downdraft too. This notch on the backside, sometimes those things are called rear inflow notches, and again, it's formed by the air coming down and then back in the backside as it sweeps in towards the tornado. All right, I'm going to go take a look at Storm Tracker 3. I'm going to let you take a look at that for just a second, because again, Storm Tracker 3 is going to be a little faster than what we're seeing there, and I'll get a better handle on where this thing is going. It looks like it's getting pretty close to Hardy. All right, so this thing is just north of Ash Flat. This thing is going to be right over, it's right over Cherokee Village, Hidden Valley area right now. So everybody in Cherokee Village, I need for all of you people to be in your tornado shelters. This thing is right over Cherokee Village right now. It looks like the tornado is actually, there's a whole number of places down here, Halupi Drive, Tehatchee Drive, Wahari Road, Tonganoxie Road. It's going to be just east of some of those. It's moving over towards Okmulgee Drive, if you know where some of these roads are, if you live in Cherokee Village Estates, down in there. That's where the really heavy core of this thing is going to be. And it looks like we've gotten a picture in. There is a distinct wall cloud, and it looks like a tornado or at least a funnel cloud. It's way off in the distance, but it looks like we do have a picture confirming what we're seeing on the radar right now. That's from Henderson, Arkansas. So again, that was when the storm was back farther to the west over Baxter and western Fulton counties. So again, this is a very dangerous thunderstorm. It has a history of potentially producing at least a funnel cloud and very large hail this afternoon. And looks like you're probably getting some really large hail in the Cherokee Village area as well. And the north side of this thing is going to be some really strong winds. And that's going to be going up towards Highway 63. So again, this thing is getting into Hardy. If you live just south of Hardy, I need for you to be in your tornado shelter as well. And this is going to be in northern Sharp County. Do we have any reports out of Little Rock, Paul, on hail size on this thing?
The last one was the one with the 4-inch hail.
Yeah, confirmed large, extremely dangerous tornado was located over Hardy and Cherokee Village Estates. So that's exactly what we're seeing this afternoon. And again, there's a sizable hook echo down here, folks. Again, here's Cherokee Village here, but this thing, the actual image on the live radar is this hook echo is right now over here. Okay, and so again, this thing is going to be moving over here. Hardy is located, let me kind of get my bearings, Highway 63 coming down. This is Hardy right here. So the hook echo itself right now is right about here. And it's going to be just to the south of Hardy at this junction in town. So all these folks down here east of Cherokee Village, south of Hardy, I need for you guys to be in your tornado shelter. And again, this thing is headed down towards the Williford area. So folks down here in Williford, this thing is rapidly moving in your direction. And I need for you guys to be in your tornado shelter as well. And you can see the very well-defined hook echo. And remember I showed you I told you there was what I called a rear flanking line. And so that was up here, and notice how that rear flanking line has swung all the way to the south and west. So that's an indication that those winds in this thunderstorm are very well organized now, and the inflow is very strong. The rear downdraft is coming in and moving right in, and again, what that's doing is it's enhancing that barrel roll of air. So there probably is a fairly sizable tornado that's going to be here. It's actually going to be just south of the Hardy area. Again, take this whole thing and shove it way over here, because that's what's happening on the live radar. And again, that's what happens when these storms move at 60 miles per hour. They're so fast that the live radar is much quicker. This is displaced by about 10 miles or 15 miles west of where it actually is on the ground right now. And unfortunately, I can't show you a Storm Tracker 3, and the reason I can't do that is because it's standard definition. Storm Tracker 3 is 22 years old, and so I can't quite bring that. You know what? I can actually do something to bring it in. It's not going to look as clear as this. Before I do that, I want to do something here real quick, and then I'll show you what Storm Tracker 3 looks like. Let's look and see if we can find that debris ball with this thing. Boy, I'll tell you what, there is an organized debris ball with this thing now, folks. There is a tornado on the ground. A tornado by itself is an indication that the funnel cloud is in contact with the ground. But yeah, there's debris lofted up with this thing. So there is damage in northern parts of Fulton County and Sharp County here in northern Arkansas this afternoon. So again, I want everybody over towards Williford and east of Hardy on Highway 63. I need for you guys to be in your tornado shelter. If you're anywhere near Highway 63 down towards Ravenden, in Bowdoin, all those areas down in there, and you're watching or you know somebody that lives down there, you need to call them and tell them that a very dangerous thunderstorm is moving that way. All right, I'm going to put on Storm Tracker 3 here. Let me go back to reflectivity so I don't mess something up. All right, this is what the Little Rock radar looks like. Let me show you what the Springfield live radar looks like. So picture that in your mind. And now this is where it is. See the difference in the... See that's Storm Tracker 3. Now, it doesn't look as intense on Storm Tracker 3 because it's way far away from us, but we're also picking up that hook echo from our radar in Fordland. And notice how it was farther east than what the National Weather Service in Little Rock was indicating to us. So again, see how far back that core is? And then again, as I take that off and I put on our radar, notice how it's further to the east. So again, again, I'm pretty convinced that there's a tornado. It's going to be east of Cherokee Village. It's going to be south of Hardy now. It's going to be in this vicinity down in here. And again, this thing's headed towards Williford. So I need folks in Williford. I need everybody here on Highway 63. I need for you guys to all be in your tornado shelter this afternoon. I'm going to put it back on the Little Rock radar because we get actually more information out of them than I can get off our radar. Our radar will kind of keep us up to date on where the major core is. But as far as what's happening on some of these other parameters, I can't show you hail off of Storm Tracker 3, but I can on this. And again, the history of this thing is producing some very large hail this afternoon. Again, this is what the hail size was up in Salem, about 1.25 inches. So again, that's some pretty large hail. Spotters are saying there is a large wedge tornado on the ground in the Hardy area. And again, I think it's going to be Hardy and just south. So folks that are in northern Arkansas, I can't stress enough, I need for you guys to move to your tornado shelter. You know, you probably can see this thing. I'm not naive to the fact that people are going to go out there and try and see this. I really hope that you don't. I would much rather you use this time to get to shelter and save your life and family, because what happens is, as you're looking at this thing, you're going to become mesmerized by it, and you're not going to realize how fast this thing is moving, and what's going to happen is it's going to be on you before you know it. And so, you know, people who go out and they see these things, you know, they're like, oh, look at that. You know, hey, everybody come look at that. You know, the next thing, oh, you know, it's getting a whole lot bigger and everything else. The wind's picking up. And don't do that. Go to shelter. Just go to shelter. If you're on the west side of this thing, okay, that's fine. But if you're on the east side of this thing, go to shelter, please. All right, again, well-defined hook echo here. The air's coming up. And again, Hardy's right in here. So this thing is way over here now. But again, very well-defined hook echo in this thing, lots of lightning going on with that. That's an indication of intense updrafts. The rear flank downdraft has now begun to swung around. It's going to come into the storm system. I think that we probably have another 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Hopefully the rear flank downdraft will cut off that inflow and the tornado will weaken. That is a possibility, but not necessarily a guarantee. Notice how this thing continues to move towards Williford. So again, I want folks in Williford to be in your tornado shelter this afternoon. And again, if there's a hail core, it's going to be right along the highway. Probably some really large hail has fallen in Hardy and all along the highway. And so anybody traveling, if you know somebody down here in this area, I need for them to get off the highway, get out of the vehicles, get into some sort of sturdy storm shelter. You know, once that thing gets baseball size hail, it's coming through the windshields, folks. It's coming through the roof of the cars. You have a skylight. You know, man, it's coming right through. So again, very dangerous to be on the sunroof, you know, very dangerous. Need to get off the highway and get some sort of protection. If anything, you can find an old gas station, pull in towards the pumps that's going to protect you from the hail. If you have to, pull the car off the side of the road, get under the car. That is going to protect you from the larger hail as well. But again, some large hail, potential tornado with this thing. I would just assume people just be in tornado shelters right now and take shelter from that. I want to review the tornado shelter rules for folks that are just tuning in. If you have a lowered area like a basement or an underground storm shelter, I want you to go there. If you have a basement, I prefer the northeast corner or the center of the house. The reason is that this thunderstorm is coming in from the west, and what it will do is it will blow the debris this way. And so if you don't want the house to shift on its foundation and you to be subject to any of that blowing debris by being on the west side of the house, I want you to be on the east side, so at least there's something over your head to cover you. The exception being anything that could catch fire. If you have a hot water heater or furnace, a fuse box, either electric coming in, propane or gas, that could catch fire, and I don't want you to be next to that. So choose the center of the house in that case. Get under the stairs, get under a sturdy piece of furniture, have some pillows and blankets, make sure you cover your head, and make sure that everybody is well dressed, and make sure you have shoes on this afternoon. That's very important if we have damage. I don't want you walking around with splinters and broken glass, nails, barbed wire, and things like that may be caught up in the storm. If you have a multi-story house, make sure you know where the kids are. Get them all downstairs next to you. Make sure your phone is charged. Turn the television set volume up so that you can hear me and the instructions that I'm giving you this afternoon while you're taking shelter in your safe hole, your Frady hole. And again, this thing is on top of Williford right now. I can tell you that because I know what the difference is here between Storm Tracker 3 and the National Weather Service radar. So let's go back and look at that real quick. Again, very dangerous thunderstorm that you see there. Here's a look at Storm Tracker 3, and like I said, it's almost on to Williford right now. And we're seeing the same type of structure. This is where the tornado is going to be right here. It is going to be south of the highway, right in here, and again, headed down towards Williford and over towards Ravenden. There's going to be very large hail in this core right in here. And then the tornado is going to be right down in here. And wow, to see the uptick even in Storm Tracker 3 as far as the intensities go. Now this, again, is the rear flanking line. This is going to have very high winds with it right in here. And those winds are going to be going from northwest to southeast. So if you live down towards Sitka here on 58, you're going to get some really strong winds, and that's going to tear things up. So be prepared to be without power this afternoon. There's going to be tree and power line damage. There's going to be some roof damage in that areas. Old barns are really going to take it on the chin. Make sure the livestock, if you've got them protected, if you have horses, for example, you'll want to make sure they're protected from any wind or flying debris. And again, the tornado is going to be right on top of Williford right now. So folks in Williford need to be in your tornado shelter immediately. Don't try to see this thing. Now, if you live in Cherokee Village, you're getting some moderate to heavy rain, but you can come out of your storm shelter if you haven't had any damage. So if you're in Cherokee Village, you are now behind the storm system, you're good. If you're in Saddle, you can now come out of your storm shelter here in Fulton County. You're still getting some rain, but you can come out of your tornado shelter there. It is over here in Sharp County where we may have this potentially very large thunderstorm, and this is going to be to the southwest of Ravenden Springs. So folks here in eastern Sharp County, again, I need for you guys to remain in your tornado shelter. It looks like there is a very active tornado doing damage there. With that in mind, I'm going to switch it back to the Little Rock radar. And it looks like the rear flank downdraft is starting to move into the storm. So hopefully we can kind of weaken this tornado, and that would be some great news. However, as we saw just a little while ago, what happened was it did go through a cycle. It looked like the tornado may have weakened for a while and then redeveloped. And hopefully as this rear flank downdraft swings in, it'll cut off that inflow and hopefully kill off that tornado. So that would be a very good thing to happen. We still have a little while to go before it actually gets out of our viewing area. But again, folks over here in eastern Sharp County, a very dangerous tornado-producing thunderstorm is really affecting folks over there, and I need for you guys to move to your tornado shelter quickly. Remember, make sure you get dressed. Make sure you have your tornado safety kit with you. Make sure you have your KY3 First Alert app with you, and make sure you turn up the sound on your television set. All righty. Okay, so we do have some structural damage in Cherokee Village, and this is a public report that Paul has been handing me. It says front of home, front of a house gone. Some cars are crushed, and that is a public report in Cherokee Village. So hopefully everybody there was taking shelter. We don't have, this isn't a report of, do we have any personal injuries that are being reported, Paul?
I don't see any reported yet.
Okay.
On here.
All right.
And hopefully we don't have any down the road.
Exactly.
We do, Ron, I do want to mention to you that North Arkansas Electric is reporting about 530 members have lost power. So that's in the Salem, Wheeling, and Union areas.
Okay, so that's going to be all in Fulton County. And again, Mel Coleman's a good friend of mine, so I know that he's going to get his crew out there to get that fixed up very, very quickly. Again, want to get back to Williford. Again, the tornado is going to be right over the heart of town right now. And let me just kind of move this here and give you guys a storm track for folks that may be traveling down towards Imboden. So again, this is going to be on a very highly traveled portion of the highway 63 this afternoon. That's headed down towards Black Rock. But again, this thing is moving just like this at about 60 miles per hour, so it's faster than what I can put on here. But Willowbird's in the path of this thing, Ravenden's in the path of this thing, and Bowdoin's in the path of this thing. Black Rock's going to be in the path of this. Portia, again, these are all towns that are right on Highway 63 between Hardy and Jonesboro. So again, this is very bad. There's lots of truck traffic on here. The truckers, I need for you guys to maybe take an alternate route. Go find a place to get off the road and take shelter. Those things are great big kites and can really get caught up in the wind and get flipped regardless of how heavy they are. There's going to be, you can wind up having accidents. People will stop in the heavy rain and brake, and you won't see it. So again, folks down here on Highway 63, they need to get off of the road and get to some sturdy shelter. And if you know somebody that's traveling, make sure you call them and tell them that the storm is down there. Find out where they are and tell them to take shelter from that storm, because oftentimes people are driving, they may have satellite radio on, they may have their Bluetooth on, playing their playlist, and they're driving into a very dangerous storm, and I don't want that this afternoon. So again, all of these towns, or most of these towns that you see here, are right along Highway 63, and again, I want folks to be aware that there is a very bad storm that's moving down through that part of the Ozarks here in north central Arkansas. All right, let me take this off of here, and looks like the storm is maybe cutting off some of that inflow, which would be great news. Let's see what we have on the velocity scan this afternoon, if I can pick that back up. That's still got quite a bit of spin to it, folks. This thing's still pretty dangerous. So there is the all right, so between this point here, over here in the light green, and this point over here in the red, which is actually kind of a wide circulation, there's about a 110 knots of gate-to-gate shear. So you've got 59 that are going towards the radar and 51 that are going away from the radar. So if you were to stick a pencil in here, it would spin this way. So this wind pushes this way, and this green one over here pushes the finger up this way. And so that's how we know that we have spin right in here, and that's going to be southeast of Willowford. It's going to be mostly south of Highway 62, which is where the tornado is going to be. So hopefully that's out over open country and is not going to affect all of that traffic. However, the rain, the hail core is going to be up in here, so that is going to affect that traffic that is going to be on Highway 62. So again, this is how we know where that tornado is. Let me take this off of here and clear that out for a second. Go back to this and put on the correlation coefficient. And right there where we had that spin southeast of Willowford, we're still picking up some debris. So it could be one of two possibilities. A, it's either still producing a tornado and we're getting additional debris, or the debris is lofted and hasn't come back down to the ground yet. Either way, it's a sign that this thunderstorm has been strong enough that it has produced a tornado and has debris up in it. And as Paul handed me that note just a few minutes ago, we know there's been structural damage in Cherokee Village, Arkansas. So some of that debris may still be lofted up into the storm. Things like files, papers, linens, smaller things will get caught up in that and could get taken for miles down the road. I know that in some of the tornadoes we've had, like at my house, I've actually found stuff from Joplin in my house. So that stuff can travel 70 or 80 miles, still lofted up in the storm. But again, there is still some debris that is lofted up into that tornadic thunderstorm this afternoon. And again, that thing is headed down just to the southwest of Bowdoin, which is going to be outside of our viewing area here very shortly. But we're going to track this thing for a little bit to make sure that folks are safe this afternoon. Put the reflectivity back on. You know what? So we've kind of lost the inflow. So the rear flank downdraft has come down. That's this line here. And what it's done is it's cut off that inflow into the main part of the storm. So what's going to happen now, this line right here is going to produce really high straight line winds. So these winds are going to go shooting straight out like this and down into this next county, and are going to produce damage. And see the lightning in here? So what's happening is on the ground, this wind is flowing out really strong, and up top, this air is going in. So you've got this downdraft here and this updraft here, and that's where you're getting all of this lightning that's forming right in here southeast of Willowford. All righty? Okay. I need to go check something here real quick. Paul's got, you got some more notes for me?
That just came in.
All righty. So they have canceled the tornado warning for Fulton and Izard County. So this tornadic storm is now outside of our viewing area. I do want to remind everybody, let's see. All righty. I want to read this one note. It says, a tornado observed, damage threat catastrophic, hail size of 4 inches for Lawrence, Randolph, parts of Sharp County until 8 p.m. tonight. Current time is 7:50, so they have canceled it for Fulton and Izard County. They're keeping it for Sharp County. At 7:47, they have confirmed a large and destructive tornado was located near Ravenden, or about 11 miles northwest of Black Rock. And again, that's going to be right in that area that we've been talking about along Highway 63. They say it's now moving to the east at 50 miles an hour. I think it's a little bit south of east, but again, it's moving along very rapidly at 50 miles per hour. And again, they did cancel the tornado warning for Fulton and Izard County. So if you live in Fulton County, you can now come out of your tornado shelter. If you live in Izard County, you also can now come out of your tornado shelter there as well. It does look like the National Weather Service has actually issued a tornado watch, and I think this is going to be for northeastern Arkansas, and that is probably going to go until, let's see, current time is 8 o'clock. My guess is that's going to go till about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So again, if you're traveling, planning on traveling down to Jonesboro, planning on traveling down to Memphis, they think that there's enough activity out there that this stuff is going to continue. And again, it looks like we're getting some really high winds. And also, notice how we may, even though we cut off that inflow, I told you could go through a cycle, and it looks like we're starting to cycle things back up again. So there may be a cycle trying to take place just to the southwest of Imboden. So again, this thunderstorm, tornadic producing thunderstorm, is going to be moving very quickly down towards Black Rock, and again, that's going to be on Highway 63. Now the visibility in this part, if you haven't traveled this road, visibility is really poor. The road kind of goes down in the valley, and so there's lots of hills on either side, and there's certainly lots of trees because you're going through the forest, so you're not going to be able to see. Your visibility is going to be really poor here, so I would much rather people just take shelter than try to see or to visualize this tornado before they decide to take shelter. Just do it, let the storm pass, and worry about the rest of the stuff later. I'd rather everybody be safe. So far, we don't have any reports of injuries, and I really would like to keep it that way. All right, so again, this thunderstorm, and this tornadic thunderstorm is moving down towards Imboden. I'm going to let you do that for just a second. I want to take a look at Storm Tracker 3 real quick. Over here, let me move off of this thing. Let it cycle around for a second. So there have been some other thunderstorms developed behind this main tornado producing thunderstorm, and I haven't really focused on that because this thunderstorm that we've been talking about really is the main show. But there are some other areas of rain. There's going to be some around the Willow Springs area on the east side of town on Highway 60, just outside of Willow Springs. There's also going to be some fairly moderate to heavy rain now from most of Ozark County. It looks like Gainesville's getting some moderate to heavy rain. Theodosia's picking up some moderate to heavy rain again. And then there's some thunderstorm activity that trails off. It's going to be, looks like northwestern Marion County, Arkansas, and then over probably just to the south of Green Forest. There's a little cell that's in there. None of those are tornadic, but there is some additional rain that's there. And then this other tornado-producing thunderstorm is now out of our viewing area, and this thing is headed down towards the Walnut Ridge area. All right.
Powell County getting a report of baseball-size hail.
Getting some baseball-size hail?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go back.
Those are public reports.
Yeah, let me go back up and kind of look there real quick before we leave you tonight. Okay, so the good news here is this. Good news and bad news. The good news is this big tornado-producing thunderstorm is now outside of our viewing area. So I'm going to let the Jonesboro television stations handle that. In the meantime, I want to kind of switch radars again. And let's see whether or not Springfield is back. Yeah, Springfield, I think, is back. So let me zoom in to these thunderstorms here in Howell in Ozark County. So these thunderstorms are fairly sizable, and these things may also be producing some fairly sizable hail this afternoon too. So let's see if we can pick up on any of that. There's the old hail core that's over in southeastern Taney County, but right now I'm not seeing any hail. Well, there's a little bit of hail showing up just to the west of Gainesville right in here. But apparently they're getting some public reports of fairly large hail with some of this activity that's over Howell County. So let me go back, take that off, put the radar on. And just for grins, I'm going to put Storm Tracker 3 on here for a second. So let's kind of look at this. There's Weather Service radar, Storm Tracker 3. So Springfield is back up and running, and it looks like they've got a pretty decent signal. Again, this is Storm Tracker 3, and this is our radar out of Fordland, so there is some pretty strong weather that's coming into the Mountain View area. There's one thunderstorm that's out here by the 14 Junction, northwest of West Plains. There's going to be some over here on 181 coming down towards Dot Mill. You've got some pretty heavy weather there. And then you can see either side of Gainesville, we have some areas of moderate to heavy rain. And then this is going to be down around the Theodosia area in southwestern Ozark County right now. All of those thunderstorms are going to be capable of producing some fairly sizable hail this afternoon. So again, if you're ahead of these thunderstorms and you can see them coming in, make sure you've moved your vehicles in the garage or in the barn. If you have that, try to protect them, put them under some sort of awning somewhere. I think hail is going to be the main threat that we're going to see up here in southwest Missouri. None of this stuff looks tornadic to me. All of this stuff looks like it's going to be heavy rain, maybe some brief gusty winds, and maybe some hail. I don't see anything here that looks tornadic at all. If there were, they would be issuing some severe thunderstorm warnings, and let's just see what we have here. I turn that feature off for a second. Let me see if we put that back on. And they do have the severe thunderstorm warning out for Ozark County. So all of this stuff down here along Highway 160, they have issued a warning for. And if we put the query on for that, it's a severe thunderstorm warning until 8:30 tonight for Ozark. And again, we're looking at the potential for some pretty large hail. If they do confirm this reports of large hail in Howell County, and you know, unfortunately, there are some folks out there that like to play games during severe weather, and they'll call and they'll send a message and they'll say, hey, you know, we've got this really large hail, but it's not true. They're just, you know, trying to mess with things. But sometimes we have to get some independent verification from spotters. Apparently, they haven't done that yet, which is why they have not issued a warning for Howell County. Alrighty, so I wanted to at least briefly let everybody know that that was going on. Let me zoom back out here for a second. We'll kind of show you the whole picture real quick. And you can see the thunderstorms there. And since we're down to just a severe thunderstorm warning in Ozark County, I'm going to continue to be here and monitor it. Paul's in here with me. But since we're out of the tornado warning now, and that's expired for Sharp County, it's out of our viewing area, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go back to programming, but know that I'm here monitoring it. Just keep your dial tuned right where it is. But thanks for watching KY3. Continue to monitor your First Alert weather app.